My grandmother had Alzheimer's, so did my aunt, and now my mother has it. 3 women, 3 generations, 1 disease. And here's the one thing I can't stop thinking about. In my family, Alzheimer's has never once affected a man. For years, I told myself that was bad luck. Then I read the numbers. Of the roughly 7 million Americans living with Alzheimer's, nearly 2/3 are women. For decades, the explanation was simple. Women live longer. More years equals more risk. And there's some truth in that. But a new study out of UC San Diego says longevity is not the whole story. Not even close. The researchers tracked 13 risk factors in more than 17,000 adults. Some of the biggest ones impact women's brains more than they do men's. Same condition, but more damage. My family wasn't unlucky. My family is actually the pattern. If you're a woman with this disease in your family, the next 10 minutes are for you. I'll show you what this study found, which risk factors cost women the most, and the specific numbers I would check first. This is not generic brain advice. It comes directly from the research. I'm not a doctor. I'm a son and a health coach who has spent 5 years researching this disease because it lives in my own home. Let me tell you about the study. It's from May 2026, published in the journal Biology of Sex Differences. 2 researchers at UC San Diego School of Medicine analyzed 17,182 American adults from the Health and Retirement Study. Now, this is a big national representative sample of middle-aged and older adults. They tracked 13 dementia risk factors, not genes, not age, the ones you can actually change, such as blood pressure, blood sugar, hearing, sleep, depression, exercise, smoking, cholesterol, alcohol consumption, weight, vision, education, and social connection. Then they asked 2 questions. Who carries more of the risk factors, men or women? And when a risk factor shows up, whose thinking takes the biggest hit? The second answer surprised me the most, but both matter, so here are the results. Women carry more dementia risk factors than men. Someone finally counted. Researchers at UC San Diego tracked 13 changeable dementia risk factors in more than 17,000 American adults. Women came out higher on 7 of the 13. Depression affected 17% of women and only 9% of men. That's nearly double. Almost half the women were physically inactive. 45% of the women reported poor sleep. Women also had higher cholesterol, smoked more, and had more vision problems. Now, if you're a woman hearing that list and feeling your chest tighten, please stay with me, because the word that matters most in this research is modifiable. That means changeable. Not one item on this list is a life sentence. Depression responds to treatment. Sleep responds to treatment. Blood pressure and cholesterol move with habits and/or medication. The list is longer for women, and every single item on it you can move. That's half the study. Who carries more risk? The other half is the part I haven't been able to put down, because how common a risk factor is and how much damage it does turns out to be 2 very different things. Every participant took a cognitive test. Word recall, mental math, counting backwards. 27 points was the possible score. The researchers then measured how each risk factor related to those scores, separately for men and for women. For the big cardiovascular and metabolic risk factors, the pattern was consistent. The association was steeper in women. Diabetes was linked to nearly 3 times the drop in cognition scores for women as compared to men. High blood pressure, a steeper drop for women. Extra weight in midlife, at 55, at 65, was linked to lower scores in women, while men's scores didn't drop at all. By the age 75 though, the gap does fade, which tells you something about timing. Midlife is your window for action. And then there's the finding that made me put my coffee down. Hearing loss is more common in men, but it will do much more damage to a woman's brain. That's the new finding in the UC San Diego study of more than 17,000 adults. 64% of the men had hearing loss, while only 50% of the women. But when hearing loss shows up in a woman, it is linked to nearly double the cognitive decline impact. Diabetes is the same exact story, more common in men, but diabetes in women was nearly 3 times worse for their memory and thinking scores. The researchers' point is blunt. How common a risk factor is and how much it costs you are 2 totally different questions. For women, the expensive ones are blood sugar, blood pressure, weight in midlife, and your hearing, all measurable at a routine physical. Every one of those has a number attached to it, and a number you can check is a number you can change. So the obvious question is why? Why would the same condition cost a woman more than a man? And here's the honest answer. No one fully knows yet, but there are 3 leading suspects. The first suspect is menopause. Julie Paugh, the senior researcher on this study, calls menopause largely a neurological transition. Blood pressure shifts, glucose metabolism shifts, inflammation shifts. The body changes how it handles the systems this study flagged. The second factor is genetics. The ApoE4, the biggest genetic risk factor or for late onset Alzheimer's, raises risk more in women than it does in men. About 1 in 4 people carry that gene. Knowing your status is a conversation worth having. The third is stress load. 2/3 of dementia caregivers are women. Many are raising children and watching over a parent at the same time. Chronic stress is not a footnote in brain health. Now the caveat, because you deserve the honest version. This study is a snapshot. It shows associations, not proof of cause. Some of the measures were self-reported. The researchers say this themselves, and they are building a long-term trial now. But inside this data sits the detail that gives me hope. Women with 0 risk factors scored higher than men on all of the cognitive tests. Higher. The female brain is not fragile. The baseline is strength. The risk factors are the problem. And the risk factors, well, they can be worked on. So what do you do with this information? You don't need a specialist or a special appointment. You need your next physical and a short list. Number 1 on that list, blood pressure. Know your number. Untreated high blood pressure is the most fixable thing in this entire list. 2 is blood sugar. Ask for a fasting glucose or a A1C. If it's creeping up, you want to know in your 50s and not in your 70s. Number 3 is cholesterol, a standard lipid panel. Women in this study carried more elevated cholesterol than men did. 4, a hearing test, a baseline audiogram. Quick, painless, and almost no one has done one since childhood. And finally, the quiet 2, sleep and mood. If you're sleeping badly or you suspect depression, those are not character flaws to push through. They're risk factors that respond to treatment. And finally, keep moving. And to be specific, do weight-bearing exercises. The adage goes, what's good for your heart is good for your brain. Now, this is where I'm going to get personal. I get my blood drawn every 4 months. Blood pressure, blood sugar, cholesterol, the markers that tell me where I'm headed. I track the trends, not single readings. But this study caught me on something, and I'd rather show you the gap than to pretend that I don't have one. I do it because Alzheimer's took my grandmother, my aunt, and now it's taking my mom. I don't guess about my brain. Well, except it turns out I do on some things. I haven't had a hearing test since middle school. with the school nurse and a pair of headphones, raising your hand when you hear the beep. It's been more than 30 years. So when I read the new UC San Diego study on dementia risk, hearing loss was linked to nearly double the cognitive impact in women as compared to men. And untreated hearing loss is one of the biggest changeable dementia risk factors on record for everyone, myself included. So at my next appointment, I'm asking my doctor for a baseline hearing test. One number that I've been guessing at for 30 years. I'd rather know how my hearing is. What's that you say? That's my list. Yours may look different, different history, different starting point, different doctor. Take this study to your next appointment and build your own plan. That conversation is the whole point to this video. Here's what I want you to take from this. You don't need a perfect plan. You need one honest step, one number you stop guessing about. If you're past the reading stage, if you want help working out which numbers matter for you and what to do about them, I do this kind of work one-to-one. There's a link below to book a free 20-minute call with me. We'll talk about where you are and what your first step is. This is not a pitch. By the end of the call, you'll know whether I can help you. And if you're not there yet, that's fine. Go slow. The newsletter is where I share the research, the protocols, and what I'm doing each week. Subscribe to because I've seen it. My grandmother never got this kind of information. Neither did my mom or my aunt, but you have it now, so please use it. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next week.